So we're gonna wrap up the story of Ruth and Boaz finally. It's the tail end of Ruth chapter 4, and the whole concept of the kinsman redeemer is fulfilled. They have a son. And this is really important because Boaz pointed out back in that little ceremony when he officially married Ruth that he would have a son to carry on the legacy of her dead husband, which, by the way, I misspoke in an earlier video and said we didn't know which of Elimelech's sons she had married. Boaz mentioned it there. It was Mahlon. It would have no bearing on this story if it had been the other one. We know next to nothing about those two sons anyway. But whatever, yeah, it's in there. It was Mahlon. All that matters for this story is that Obed is born, and he has effectively two fathers. Biologically, he is the son of Boaz. Legally, he is the son of Mahlon. And that's a very important thing to see, because that's how the whole kinsman redeemer worked. He was supposed to be the heir of Mahlon. And yet, Obed apparently had a choice that he could make. And he could choose to identify with the family of Mahlon. He could choose to identify in that inheritance, or he could choose to identify with his biological family and be the son of Boaz. Scripture never once records him connected to Mahlon. Every time Obed shows up, he's always as the son of Boaz. His family tree is highlighted 2 different times just in a few verses at the end of the book of Ruth. And they're always calling him the son of Boaz. And that, it's surprising because it seems like he shouldn't be. He was supposed to be, an heir for Mahlon, but he's listed as the son of Boaz. That shows me 2 important things. One is that you kind of get to pick and choose when you're looking at a genealogy, because Obed wasn't unique. He wasn't the only person that ever had that sort of a situation, that he had a biological father and a legal heir inheritance to another one. And he had 2 different branches that he could go in a family tree. And that's why you will find genealogies scattered throughout Scripture. Genealogies were real big in Israel. They took that very seriously. But depending on the context and the reason you're tracing it back, you might be interested in tracing a biological bloodline, or you might be interested in tracing a legal inheritance. And they're not always going to be the same thing. And that's why you can see genealogies that have some parts line up and then some parts diverge, and it's what's going on here? Some people criticize the Bible and say, oh, it's inconsistent, you can't trust it. It's not what's going on. It's just there are different interpretations if we're looking biologically or legally. We understand that today also. We have adoption. And if I'm tracing back, my wife was adopted. And so if you're looking at her lineage, you could choose to say we're going to trace through her adoptive family or her biological parents. And you get 2 different stories based on how you go. Both of them are true. Both of them are correct. And so it's a matter of context. It doesn't mean things are inconsistent and you can't trust it. It's fine. More importantly to me, the part that excites me about Obed is the fact that he, I guess when he grew up or something, just at some point in his life, he made a choice. He had the ability to choose whether he wanted to identify with Mahlon or with Boaz. Like I said, Scripture never records him connected to Mahlon, so he clearly chose Boaz. And makes a lot of sense. The whole story shows Boaz as a great guy, so identifying with him is very reasonable. But what's really special about that is that was these 2 different things, the biological and the legal. That one is the bloodline. It's who he was as a human being, how he came to this planet. Another one was an inheritance that was available to him just because of stuff that happened that he had nothing to do with. And he made a choice of how he would identify. That's cool to me because according to the 1st chapter of John, and also later in 1 John, Jesus gives us the right to be called sons of God and to call God our Father, which means we get to make the same choice. You can choose to identify with your natural self, how you came to this planet, how we start out and how we got here, which according to the New Testament is not just as sinners and far from God, but as active rebels against God. But then, thanks to Jesus and the work he did as our kinsman redeemer, we have access to an inheritance we can be co-heirs with Jesus and call God our Father. And so we get to identify with a different Father. You're not stuck just with your raw biology, but we get to be part of a different family. You can identify with a new Father. I think that's awesome.